The city was loud that night, filled with colors, smells, and voices that never rested. It was called the Market of Lost Things, a place where anything could be bought if you had the courage to look and the money to pay. Broken machines, stolen, treasures, strange pets, and even living beings were sold under the neon lamps. People walked fast, not asking questions, because in this market, silence was safer than curiosity. Among the crowd walked a lonely man. His name was Daniel. He had no family, no friends, and no one waiting for him at home. He worked small jobs during the day and wandered the city at night, trying to fill the empty space in his heart. That night, his steps carried him deeper into the market than ever before. He passed a stall where mechanical birds sang sad songs. Another stall showed bottles filled with glowing blue smoke, each whispering forgotten secrets. But Daniel's eyes were pulled toward the center, where a small crowd had gathered. He heard the voice of an auctioneer shouting numbers, his voice sharp like knives. On the stage stood a line of figures for sale. Some looked human, some did not. They were covered in chains, their heads lowered. In shame, the crowd shouted bids, throwing coins and credits into the air. Daniel felt a shiver in his chest. He hated this place, but he could not turn away. At the very end of the line stood a small figure. She was thinner than the rest, wearing an old dress and a dirty sack covered her head. The crowd laughed at her, calling her useless, a waste not worth even a single coin. The auctioneer grew angry, shouting louder, but nobody wanted her. Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on that lonely figure. Something inside him whispered, "She is, just like you, forgotten and unwanted." The auctioneer cursed and said, "Fine, 3 credits. That is all I ask, just 3. Still no one raised a hand. Daniel felt his heart beat faster. He had little money, but he raised his hand slowly. The crowd turned and laughed at him, whispering about the fool who would pay for nothing. The auctioneer slammed his hand down, shouting, "Sold for 3 credits." The figure with the sack was pushed off the stage and the chain was handed to Daniel. Daniel held the chain softly, not pulling, not hurting, only guiding. The figure walked quietly, without sound, without fight. Together they left the noisy market, the laughter of the crowd still echoing behind them. Daniel's chest felt heavy, but also alive. For the first time in many years, the streets outside were darker and colder. Daniel looked at the small figure beside him, still covered by the sack. He wanted to see her face, but something told him to wait. He walked slowly, carefully, until they reached his small home at the edge of the city. Inside the home, the silence grew deeper. Daniel lit a small lamp, its light shaking across the walls. He gently removed the chain and placed it on the table. The figure did not run, did not move, only stood there breathing softly. Daniel's hands trembled as he reached for the sack. He asked in a quiet voice, "Who are you? What is your name?" There was no answer, only stillness. Slowly, he untied the rope and pulled the sack away. Underneath was not what he expected. Her skin glowed faintly with silver light. Her eyes were large and shining. Strange markings ran across her cheeks, and her hair fell like threads of night. She was not human, not even close. Daniel stepped back, his heart racing. The girl looked at him with eyes full of fear and silence. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She hugged herself tightly as if she expected pain. Daniel whispered, "I will not hurt you." But she did not answer. She only stood like a ghost in the lamp's glow. Daniel felt the weight of the markets. Laughter again. Had he bought danger, or had he saved someone who was even lonelier than him? That night, Daniel sat awake, watching her from across the room. She did not sleep. Her eyes stayed open, sometimes shining brighter in the dark. Strange sounds filled the air, soft humming, like music from another world. Daniel wondered if she was crying or calling out to someone far away. The city outside was alive with noise, but inside the house there was only the sound of 2 lonely souls breathing. Daniel thought about the 3 credits he had spent, the smallest price he had ever paid. Yet in his heart, it felt like the heaviest choice of his life. The girl with the sack on her head was now his responsibility. Morning would bring questions, fear, maybe even danger. But as he closed his tired eyes, Daniel could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The market had given him something he did not understand, a mystery that could change his life forever. The morning light entered through the broken window, filling Daniel's small house with pale colors. He had not slept much. His mind was filled with questions, fears, and the image of the strange girl sitting in silence. When he turned his eyes toward her, she was still there, sitting on the floor, knees close to her chest, eyes staring at nothing. It was as if she had no soul, no voice, no hope. Daniel tried to speak, his voice soft. "Do you understand me?" The girl turned her head slowly, her glowing eyes fixed on him, but no answer came. Her lips moved slightly, as though she wanted to say something, but only silence filled the room. To Daniel, it felt like looking at a person without a face, without a way to show herself to the world. He brought her a small bowl of food, bread and warm soup. She looked at it with suspicion, then at him. Her hands shook as she picked it up, and when she ate, it was slow, almost painful. Daniel realized she was starving, yet too afraid to take more than small bites. For hours, the house was silent except for the sound of her breathing and the ticking of the old wall clock. Daniel wanted to ask questions: where she came from, who she was, why she was sold in the market, yet he could not. She seemed trapped behind an invisible wall, a prisoner of fear or pain he did not understand. Still, something in her silence pulled him closer. That night, Daniel decided to try something different. He took a small notebook and a pencil, placed them before her, and drew a circle. Then he pointed to himself and said slowly, "Daniel." She watched him carefully, her head tilting like a child learning for the first time. After a long pause, she touched the paper with the pencil, her hand unsteady. She drew a symbol not from earth, glowing faintly as if the pencil carried her energy. Daniel stared, confused but amazed. He pointed again at himself, repeating, "Daniel," the girl whispered for the first time, her voice broken like dry leaves. "Neil." Daniel's heart almost stopped. It was the first word she had spoken since he brought her home. Though weak and fragile, it carried the weight of 1,000 emotions. She tried again, her voice shaking. "Neil." Her eyes filled with tears, as if saying a human name was both painful and freeing. Daniel knelt beside her, smiling gently. "Yes, Daniel." For a brief moment, her glowing eyes softened, and the invisible wall seemed thinner. That night, when Daniel closed his eyes, he heard strange sounds. The girl was in the other room, whispering words in her language, low and haunting. Sometimes her voice rose into a song filled with sorrow, echoing through the house. Daniel listened in silence, his chest heavy with emotions he could not name. Days passed, and slowly she learned small words: water, food, sleep, and of course, Daniel. But even as her human words grew, her silence remained heavy, her face often blank, her eyes hiding deep secrets as if she carried wounds older than her body. One evening, Daniel cut his hand while fixing a chair. Blood ran down his skin, and he cursed under his breath. Before he could move, the girl rushed forward, her hands glowing faint silver. She pressed her palms against his cut, and within seconds the bleeding stopped. Daniel stared in shock, his voice trembling. "You healed me." The girl looked away as if ashamed. Her lips whispered something in her own language, words Daniel could not understand. But he could see the sorrow in her eyes, sorrow of someone who once used her gift for something terrible. From that moment, Daniel knew she was not only a mystery but also someone powerful. Yet her silence made her seem fragile, almost broken. The world outside would not forgive her difference, he realized. If others saw what she could do, they would take her away, sell her, or worse. That night, Daniel dreamed of the marketplace, the laughter of the crowd, the sack on her head. He woke sweating, his eyes finding her sitting by the window, staring at the moon. Her glowing eyes reflected the light, making her look both human and unearthly. Daniel whispered into the dark, "Who are you really?" The girl turned her head, her lips trembling. But again no answer came. Instead, a single tear ran down her glowing cheek. Daniel's heart broke. He wanted to protect her even though he knew nothing about her past, even though she was still like a stranger without a face. The days grew longer, the silence between them slowly turning into something else. Not empty silence, but the silence of two people trying to understand each other. Each word she learned, each look she gave, built a fragile bridge between them. Daniel realized that loneliness had brought them together, but something deeper was beginning to grow, and yet the mystery around her only deepened. Why had she been sold for only 3 credits? Why had she been hidden with a sack on her head? And what shadows from her past were waiting in the darkness? Beyond their small home, Daniel did not know, but he could feel it. Her silence was not just silence. It was the sound of secrets too heavy to speak, secrets that could change both of their lives forever. The days slowly turned into weeks, and in that quiet house at the edge of the city, Daniel and the alien girl began to find a rhythm. It was not the rhythm of laughter and loud words, but the soft rhythm of silence, gestures, and fragile trust. She still spoke very little, her voice broken and uncertain, but each time she said his name, it felt like a spark of life in Daniel's lonely heart. Every morning, Daniel placed simple things before her: food, water, a book, or sometimes just a flower from the street. She would look at the objects with curious eyes, her head tilting the way a child tilts when trying to understand something new. Slowly, she began to copy his actions, eating when he ate, reading when he opened a book. Even though she did not know the words, it was like watching a small flame grow, uncertain but bright. One evening, Daniel tried to teach her more words. He pointed to the table and said, "Table," then to the chair and said, "Chair." Her voice was soft when she repeated them, but each attempt made Daniel smile. She struggled, sometimes failing, sometimes whispering sounds that had no meaning. Yet with every small success, her glowing eyes shone brighter. Daniel realized she wanted to learn, she wanted to belong. Still, at night the house was different. When darkness came, she often sat near the window, her eyes turned toward the stars. Her voice would rise in soft whispers, singing in a language Daniel could not understand. The songs were filled with sorrow, and though he did not know the words, he felt her pain in every note. It was the pain of someone far from home, someone who had lost everything. One night Daniel dared to sit beside her while she sang. She did not push him away. She only lowered her voice until it was almost a breath. Daniel whispered, "It sounds beautiful." Though he doubted she understood, for a moment their silence was no longer heavy. It was gentle, like two souls sitting together, sharing the same emptiness. The bond between them grew stronger when Daniel discovered more of her hidden powers. Once, when he was sick with fever, she placed her glowing hands on his forehead. The pain melted away like ice in the sun, leaving him weak but alive. He stared at her in awe, whispering, "You saved me again." She looked down, her eyes full of guilt instead of pride. Daniel understood then that her gift was not only power, but also a burden. The world outside began to notice. People in the market whispered that the man who bought the useless girl still kept her. Neighbors said strange lights were seen from his windows at night. Daniel felt the stares whenever he walked through the streets. The city was not a kind place, and secrets were never safe for long. Yet inside the house, the girl began to change. Her silence turned softer, not empty, but calm. She no longer hid her face in fear. Sometimes, when Daniel was fixing something, she would come close and watch, her eyes wide, her hands reaching out to help. Her clumsy touch often broke things, but Daniel never grew angry. He only smiled, showing her again, patient and gentle. One evening, Daniel found her holding the notebook again. She was drawing, but not words this time. The page was filled with stars, planets, and strange lines forming shapes he had never seen. Her hand moved with grace as if she was remembering a place beyond the sky. Daniel asked softly, "Is this where you come from?" She did not answer, but her eyes glistened with tears. Daniel knew the truth without words. She was far from her world, far from her people. As days passed, Daniel noticed that she laughed, not loud but small and soft. The first time it happened was when he spilled water on himself. Her lips curved into a shy smile. A sound escaped her throat. It was short and broken, but to Daniel it was the sweetest sound he had ever heard. A sound more precious than music. It was proof that she was alive, proof that she trusted him. Still, shadows of fear lingered. At night she sometimes woke with sudden screams, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Daniel rushed to her side, whispering softly, "You're safe, no one will hurt you here." She would cling to his hand, trembling until the fear faded. Daniel never asked what haunted her dreams. He knew the answer would come one day, and it would not be gentle. Slowly, their bond became something unspoken. Daniel no longer saw her as a stranger. She was not a prisoner, not a slave. She was someone fragile yet powerful, broken yet beautiful, and he knew in his heart that he could not let anyone take her away. Not the market, not the city, not even the stars that called to her at night, but outside danger was growing. The whispers about the alien girl were spreading and greedy eyes were turning toward Daniel's small home. He felt it in the way people looked at him, in the way shadows seemed to follow him in the streets. Something was coming, something that would test the fragile bond he had built with her. That night, as he watched her sleep, her face soft in the dim light, Daniel made a silent promise. He would protect her, no matter the cost. She had no voice for her story, no words for her pain, but he would stand for her. He would become the shield between her and the cruel world outside. What he did not know was that her silence carried more than sorrow. It carried secrets so heavy they could break both their lives, secrets that were slowly beginning to wake. And soon, the bond they shared would be tested by fire. The days of quiet learning and fragile peace did not last long. Outside the small house, the city whispered like a restless beast, and rumors moved from mouth to mouth. People spoke of the strange girl Daniel had brought home. They said she was not human, that her eyes glowed like fireflies, and that she carried powers not meant for Earth. At first, Daniel ignored the talk, but he soon felt the heavy weight of watchful eyes whenever he walked through the streets. Neighbors, who once passed him with silence, now looked at him with suspicion. Some avoided his path, others whispered behind his back. One man spat near his feet, muttering, "Fool, bringing danger into our streets." Daniel kept his head down, but his heart carried both fear and anger. The girl inside his home had done nothing wrong, yet the world was already preparing to judge her. One evening, as Daniel returned from the market, he saw two men waiting outside his door. They wore dark coats, their eyes sharp. They asked questions in smooth voices. "Where did you get her? What can she do? How much do you want for her?" Daniel clenched his fists and answered coldly, "She is not for sale." The men smiled thinly, but their eyes were full of hunger, the kind of hunger that saw living beings only as tools. When Daniel stepped inside, he found her sitting by the window as always. Her glowing eyes turned to him, reading the tension on his face. She whispered his name, Daniel, soft and fragile. He forced a smile and said, "It's nothing, don't worry." But inside he knew the shadows were already reaching for them. That night he dreamed of the marketplace again, the laughter, the sack on her head, the sound of chains. He woke with sweat on his brow, his heart racing. The girl was awake too, humming her sorrowful song in the corner. The sound was both beautiful and painful. It reminded him that her past was still alive, following her like a ghost. The next day, Daniel saw strangers outside the house again. They pretended to be traders or passers-by, but he knew they were watching. The girl seemed to feel it too, her eyes darting nervously, her silence heavier than before. Once, when a knock came at the door, she trembled and whispered something in her language, words filled with fear. Daniel touched her hand gently, saying, "I won't let them take you." For the first time she reached back, holding his hand. Her touch was cold but firm, her eyes shining with a silent plea. In that moment Daniel understood. Whatever her past was, it was dangerous, powerful, and still chasing her, and now by choosing to keep her, he had stepped into that shadow as well. Later that week, a storm swept across the city. Rain hammered the streets. Lightning cracked the sky. Daniel stayed inside with her, fixing the broken roof while she watched with quiet concern. When the Thunder shook the walls. She cried out in fear, curling into herself. Daniel rushed to her side, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. He whispered, "It's only thunder. You're safe here." But deep inside, he wondered if her fear was not of storms, but of something greater. That night, she finally spoke, more than a single word. Her voice was broken, trembling but full of meaning. She pointed to the sky and whispered, "Hunters." Daniel froze, staring at her. "Hunters," she repeated, her eyes wide with terror. He did not understand fully, but the word was enough to send chills down his spine. Whoever these hunters were, they were not from this city, and perhaps not from this world. Daniel realized the men at his door were only the beginning. The real danger was still on its way, drawn by her very presence. He felt anger rise in his chest, anger at the market that sold her, at the city that judged her, and at the unseen hunters who haunted her. Dreams. Yet he also felt something stronger. Determination. She had been alone long enough, and he would not let her face that darkness alone. The following days were tense. Daniel avoided crowded places, buying only what he needed, keeping the girl hidden. But whispers traveled faster than feet. And one evening, someone threw a stone at his window, shattering the glass. A voice shouted from the street, "Send her out before she brings doom on all of us." Daniel stood firm, his fists tight. He would not surrender her, no matter the cost. Inside, the girl sat trembling, her glowing eyes filled with tears. Daniel knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore," he said. Her lips moved as if she wanted to speak, but only a broken whisper escaped. Still, she clung to his words, as if they were the only shield she had. That night, when Daniel lay awake, he thought of the bond between them, fragile but unbreakable. He thought of her touch when she held his hand, of her voice when she said his name, and of her fear when she spoke of hunters. Shadows from her past had found their way into his life, but he no longer cared. For the first time in years, his heart was not empty. It was full of purpose, full of someone to protect. Yet beyond the city lights, in the dark sky where stars flickered like cold eyes, ships were moving, silent and unseen. The hunters she feared were real, and they were closer than Daniel could imagine. The city grew colder with each passing day, and so did the stares of the people around Daniel. Everywhere he went, he felt the weight of their eyes, filled with suspicion, fear, and greed. Whispers followed him through the markets. "That's the man with the alien girl. He's hiding something dangerous." Daniel kept walking, but deep inside he knew the rumors would one day bring real trouble. Still, whenever he stepped inside his small house, the world outside melted away, and only she mattered. The girl had changed in quiet ways. Her silence was still heavy, but her eyes no longer looked empty. They watched Daniel closely, following his movements, learning his ways. She began to laugh sometimes, a shy sound that filled the house like sunlight. Daniel found himself waiting for that laugh, living for those small moments when her fear faded and she looked almost human. But the danger outside grew stronger. Men returned to his door, this time not asking politely but demanding, "Sell her, give her to us, you'll be rewarded." Daniel stood firm, his jaw set. "She is not for sale." The men muttered dark threats and left, but Daniel knew they would return. The girl saw his worry, and her glowing eyes filled with guilt, as if she believed she had brought him nothing but danger. That night, Daniel sat by the fire, staring at her while she traced stars on the notebook. He thought about his life before her, a life of loneliness and silence. He thought about the night he paid 3 credits for a figure with a sack on her head. He thought about her learning his name, her touch healing his wounds, her tears shining in the dark. He realized he no longer saw her as a stranger. She had become something more, something his heart could not deny. Slowly he spoke, his voice soft. "You are not a slave to me. You are not a prisoner. You are my family." She lifted her head, confusion and emotion filling her eyes. Daniel's heart pounded. He reached out, taking her hand in his. "I want you to stay with me, not because I bought you, not because I saved you, but because I Love you. The word hung in the air like a secret. The girl trembled, her lips parting as if to answer, but no sound came. Instead, she looked down at their joined hands, her glowing eyes filled with tears. She whispered his name. Daniel, her voice breaking, and then a soft light spread from her fingers, wrapping around his hand like warmth. Daniel understood. She could not speak the same way humans did, but her light was her answer. It was her way of saying yes. Yes to him. Yes to staying. Yes to love. His chest ached with emotions too strong for words. He pulled her close, holding her for the first time. She did not resist. She rested her head against his shoulder, and for that moment the world outside could not touch them. In the days that followed, their bond grew deeper. They moved together like two pieces of one soul. She helped him with his small work, clumsy but eager. He taught her words, and she taught him silence. Silence that was not empty, but peaceful. They no longer needed many words. For every look, every touch carried meaning, but outside the shadows pressed closer. One evening a stone crashed through the window. A voice shouted, "You will regret this, fool." Daniel stood at the door with anger in his eyes. He no longer feared them, for he knew he had something worth protecting, something stronger than his own life. That night, he made a decision. In his heart he already knew it, but now he chose to make it real. He would marry her not by law, not by papers, but by promise, by bond, by heart. He prepared a small ceremony in the house. Placing a candle on the table, a flower in her hair, she watched him with wide, glowing eyes as if she understood something important was about to happen. Daniel took her hand and spoke softly. "I do not know the words of your people, but I know the truth of my heart. From this day you are my wife and I am your husband. Together we will build a home, no matter what the world says." The girl trembled, her light growing brighter. She touched his face gently and whispered his name again. Daniel. But this time her voice carried something new, something like joy. In that quiet house, with no witness but the stars, a man and an alien girl became one family. Daniel felt the loneliness of his life break apart, replaced by warmth, hope, and love. She no longer looked like a stranger with a sack on her head. She was his partner, his heart, his choice. Yet beyond their walls, danger was still moving. The hunters, she feared, had not forgotten. Ships in the sky were drawing closer, and greedy men in the city were waiting for their chance. Their love was real, but it would soon be tested. Daniel did not know when or how, but he felt it like a storm on the horizon. Still, that night as they sat together, her head resting against his shoulder, her glowing eyes watching the fire, he chose not to think of the storm. He chose to hold her hand and believe in their bond, for love had given him strength, and he would need all of it for the battles yet to come. Time moved quietly inside the small house. The city outside still whispered with fear and greed, but within those four walls, life found a new shape. Daniel and the alien girl were no longer strangers, no longer master and slave. They were husband and wife, bound not by law but by love. Each day they woke together, shared meals, and built routines that felt simple yet powerful. For the first time in Daniel's life, loneliness no longer ruled his heart. She learned more words as the days passed. Her voice was still soft and broken, but she tried. Sometimes she repeated Daniel's words with shy determination. Home, safe, together. Each time she said these, Daniel felt his chest grow warm. He never thought such simple words could feel so beautiful. They worked together on small things. Daniel showed her how to fix the broken roof, how to water the plants, and how to cook simple meals. She struggled, her hands clumsy, often burning the bread or spilling water. Yet every mistake made her laugh softly, and Daniel laughed with her. The sound of their laughter filled the house, covering the silence that once weighed on both of them. At night she no longer sang only sad songs. Sometimes she hummed gentle tunes that carried peace. Daniel would sit beside her, listening, his eyes closed. He did not understand the words, but he understood the feeling. The songs told him she was healing, little by little, piece by piece. She was learning what it meant to belong. Their bond deepened when they found something neither expected. A child, not by blood but by choice. One evening, Daniel discovered a small abandoned boy in the market, skinny, starving, with no name. The city was cruel to children without families. Daniel looked into the boy's frightened eyes and remembered his own loneliness. Without thinking, he brought him home. The girl's reaction surprised him. She knelt before the child, her glowing eyes soft. She touched his cheek with gentle fingers, and the boy, though trembling, did not pull away. For the first time, Daniel saw something in her he had never seen before. A mother's tenderness. She whispered a word in her own language, perhaps child or safe, and the boy leaned against her as if he understood. From that night they were no longer two. They became a family of three. Daniel named the boy Hope, because that was what he brought into their lives. The girl repeated the name often, her voice uncertain but proud. Hope. It became her favorite word. Daniel smiled each time she said it. Life inside the house grew brighter. The boy filled the rooms with laughter, running from corner to corner, curious about everything. The girl cared for him with patience, guiding him with her soft hands. She learned to cook better, to fix his clothes, to sing him to sleep. Daniel watched them, his heart swelling with pride and love. For the first time, the house felt alive. It no longer belonged to a lonely man. It belonged to a family. Daniel would come home from work and see them waiting at the door, the boy's smile wide, the girl's eyes glowing warmly. The emptiness that had once haunted him was gone, replaced by light, but shadows never stay away for long. Strange ships began to appear in the sky, silent shapes hovering far above the city. People whispered about them in fear. "The hunters are coming," they said. Daniel heard the whispers and felt dread twist in his stomach. He remembered the word the girl had spoken long ago, hunters. He knew now that they were real and they were searching. The girl sensed it too. Sometimes at night she stared at the stars with fear in her eyes, clutching the boy close to her chest. Daniel would place a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "I won't let anyone take you. I won't let them take our family." She would nod, but the fear in her eyes never faded completely. One evening, as the three of them shared a meal, a loud knock shook the door. Daniel froze, his heart pounding. He opened it to find the same men from before, their faces darker, their voices harder. "We know what she is," they said, "and we know what she can do. Give her up before the hunters arrive, or you will all be destroyed." Daniel's blood boiled. He slammed the door in their faces, his hands shaking with rage. The girl looked at him. Worry in her glowing eyes, she whispered his name, "Daniel," and touched his hand. He looked at her, then at the boy, and spoke with fire in his voice. "We are a family. No one will break us apart." That night, Daniel lay awake, thinking of what lay ahead. He knew the hunters would come and the city's people would turn against them. He knew the danger was greater than anything he had ever faced. But when he looked at the sleeping boy and the girl curled beside him, he felt strength. They were not just two lost souls anymore. They were a family of two who had become three, and that gave him courage. Outside, the ships moved closer, their lights flickering like cold stars. The shadows from her past were finally reaching their door. The test of their love, their bond, and their new family was about to begin. The night was heavy with silence. The small house that once felt safe now carried a weight of fear. Outside, the city was restless, people whispering about the strange ships above the clouds. Daniel stood at the window, his jaw tight, his eyes searching the dark sky. Beside him, the girl held Hope in her arms, rocking him gently, her glowing eyes full of worry. She already knew what was coming. The hunters were here. The first sign came as a low hum that shook the ground. Windows rattled and dogs barked in the distance. The boy clung to Daniel's leg, asking with trembling words, "What is that?" Daniel placed a hand on his head, forcing a calm smile. "It's nothing. Stay with your mother." But inside, his heart was beating like thunder. He had never faced enemies like this, enemies not of this world. Then the lights appeared in the sky, cold and sharp, moving in strange patterns. People in the city screamed, running into the streets. Some shouted prayers, others cursed. All eyes turned upward as the hunters' ships descended. The girl trembled, whispering words in her own language, her face pale with fear. Daniel touched her shoulder. "We stay together no matter what." She looked at him, her eyes shining with tears, and nodded. The knock on the door did not come this time. Instead, the hunters arrived with silence. A beam of light broke through the ceiling, blinding and white. The boy screamed. The girl pulled him close, and Daniel stepped in front of them. His voice shook but held courage. "You can't have them." From the light stepped figures tall and strange, armored in silver, their faces hidden, their voices echoed like metal. "Return her to us, she does not belong here." Daniel shouted back, "She belongs with me, with us. This is her home now." The hunters ignored his words, their eyes fixed on the girl. She shook her head violently, whispering again and again, "No, no." Her light grew stronger, glowing across her skin like fire. The boy hid behind her dress, his small hands clutching the fabric. Daniel stood firm, but he felt powerless against such beings. One of the hunters raised a hand, a weapon glowing in its grip. The girl cried out, her voice no longer broken but strong, "Stop!" For the first time, Daniel heard her true voice, powerful, echoing, filled with something ancient. The hunters froze, their helmets turning toward her. She stepped forward, her body glowing brighter than ever. Daniel stared in shock, realizing the truth. She was not just any alien. She was someone important, someone powerful. The hunters spoke again, their voices low. "Princess, your time of hiding is over. You must return to your people. Your world needs you." Daniel's heart stopped. "Princess." The word struck him like lightning. The girl turned to him, her glowing eyes soft and broken. In that moment, he understood everything. She was not a slave, not a lost wanderer. She was royalty, a child of another world, sold and hidden by enemies who wanted her gone. Daniel's chest ached. He wanted to hold her, to beg her to stay, but he saw the truth in her eyes. She loved him, but her past was calling. She whispered his name. "Daniel," her voice trembling. He stepped closer, taking her hand. "You are my wife, my family. I don't care who you were before, I care who you are now." The boy clung to them both, tears on his face. "Don't go," he cried. The girl fell to her knees, hugging them tightly. Her light wrapped around all three of them, forming a warm shield. The hunters stepped forward, but the shield pushed them back. Daniel realized her power was greater than theirs. She was not helpless. She was stronger than any of them had known. But her strength came with pain. Using it drained her, her body shaking as the glow grew brighter. Daniel shouted, "Don't! You'll hurt yourself." But she smiled weakly, her voice soft. "Family safe." Her power burst like a wave, throwing the hunters back into the light. Their weapons fell silent, their voices faded. The ships above trembled, then slowly rose into the sky, retreating into the stars. The danger was gone, at least for now. When the light faded, she collapsed into Daniel's arms, her body weak, her breath shallow. "Stay with me," he begged, holding her close. She opened her eyes slowly, her glowing gaze filled with love. "Daniel," she whispered, "no more alone." He kissed her forehead, tears falling down his cheeks. "Never alone, I promise." The boy hugged them both, crying into her dress. The city outside remained restless, whispers of what had happened spreading fast. But inside the small house, love had won its first battle. Daniel knew the hunters would come again. He knew the world would never stop trying to take her away, but he also knew something stronger. They were not just a man and an alien girl anymore. They were a family, a bond forged by love, tested by fire. As dawn broke, Daniel stood at the window, the girl resting against him, the boy asleep in her arms. He looked at the rising sun and whispered to himself, "They will come again, but so will we together." The girl opened her eyes, glowing softly, and whispered the same word. Together. Their voices blended, a promise stronger than any chain. And so the lonely man who once spent 3 credits in a market of lost things now had something priceless. He had a wife, a child, and a family. The hunters could come. The world could turn against them. But love had already built a home. And love, Daniel knew, was stronger than fear.